Look at this. A black man in my neighborhood pretending he belongs here. Officer Ryan Caldwell sneered as he grabbed Marcus Bennett's toolbox and threw it onto the concrete driveway. The loud crash made every neighbor behind the windows freeze. Marcus looked down at his scattered tools, then calmly raised his eyes. "Officer, this is my home." Ryan laughed and stepped closer. "Your home? You really believe a guy wearing an old jacket and driving a rusty truck deserves to stand among people like us?" He shoved Marcus against the patrol car, letting the entire street watch. "You should be grateful I'm even giving you a warning. Men like you usually don't know when they've crossed the line." Marcus stayed silent, but his aging canine Shadow moved beside him, watching carefully. Ryan looked at the dog and smirked. "What are you going to do with that old animal? Protect your imaginary reputation?" Then he leaned closer and whispered, "Remember your place, Marcus. This neighborhood doesn't need people like you causing problems." But Ryan didn't know someone across the street was recording everything. Someone who recognized Shadow. Someone who knew Marcus Bennett was hiding a past that could change the entire city. Because the quiet black man he tried to humiliate was not the person Ryan thought he was. Stay until the end to discover the shocking truth behind Marcus's hidden identity. Comment your city and local time below, and subscribe for more powerful stories about justice, courage, and human dignity. The morning after the confrontation, Maple Ridge felt different. For years, the neighborhood had been known as a quiet place where people waved at each other from their porches, children rode bicycles along the sidewalks, and neighbors trusted one another. But after what happened in front of Marcus Bennett's house, a strange tension settled over the streets. People had seen Officer Ryan Caldwell standing over Marcus. They had seen the way Ryan spoke to him. They had seen Marcus, a man known for fixing cars, helping elderly neighbors, and never causing trouble, treated like a criminal in front of his own home. But what they didn't see was everything that led Marcus to that moment. Every morning at 5:30, Marcus woke up before the sun came over the trees. He made a simple cup of coffee, checked on Shadow, and walked through the small backyard behind his house. Shadow was older now. His black and gray fur had started to fade around his face. His movements were slower than they used to be, but his eyes still carried the same focus and intelligence Marcus had known for years. "You still think you're the one protecting me, don't you?" Marcus whispered with a small smile. Shadow looked up at him and gently moved his tail. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, I know, you always have." To everyone else in Maple Ridge, Shadow was just an old dog. But to Marcus, Shadow was family. After breakfast, Marcus drove his old blue pickup truck to Bennett Auto Repair, the small shop he owned on the edge of town. The business wasn't fancy. The walls were covered with old tools, faded calendars, and photographs of customers who had trusted him over the years. Marcus never cared about becoming rich. He cared about helping people. When a single mother couldn't afford a repair, he lowered the price. When an elderly man needed his brakes fixed before a road trip, Marcus stayed late to finish the job. When someone asked why he didn't charge more, Marcus always gave the same answer. Everybody deserves someone who will treat them right. That was why most people in Maple Ridge respected him. But Officer Ryan Caldwell was different. Ryan had noticed Marcus months earlier. At first, it was small things. A patrol car slowing down when Marcus drove by. A question about where Marcus was going. A comment about why he was always watching the neighborhood. Marcus ignored it. He had learned long ago that some battles became worse when you fought them with anger. But Ryan interpreted Marcus's calmness as weakness. And that was his mistake. Later that afternoon, Ryan stopped by Bennett Auto Repair. The sound of his boots against the concrete floor made Marcus look up from the engine he was repairing. "Busy day?" Ryan asked. Marcus wiped his hands with a cloth. "Just working." Ryan looked around the shop. "Must be nice." Marcus frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Ryan walked slowly around the garage. "Having people trust you so easily." Marcus didn't answer. Ryan stopped beside an old photograph hanging near the office door. It showed Marcus standing beside a group of mechanics at a community event. "You like making people think you're some kind of hero, don't you?" Marcus looked at the picture. "No, I just help people." Ryan smiled. "Funny, everyone has a story about themselves." Marcus studied his face. "Officer Caldwell, if there's something you want to say, just say it." Ryan stepped closer. "You should be careful about how you talk to officers." Marcus remained calm. "I'm just asking a question." Ryan stared at him for a few seconds before walking away. But before leaving, he turned around. "People who hide things usually get exposed eventually." Those words stayed in Marcus's mind, because Ryan was right about one thing. Marcus did have secrets, but not the kind Ryan imagined. That night, Marcus sat alone on his porch while Shadow rested beside him. The street was quiet, the same street where Ryan had embarrassed him in front of everyone. Marcus looked at the old neighborhood around him. He remembered arriving there years ago after leaving a life that very few people knew about. A life filled with danger. A life where every decision could mean someone lived or died. He had chosen Maple Ridge because he wanted peace. He wanted to be just Marcus Bennett. Not a name, not a title, not a legend, just a man, a neighbor, a friend. But sometimes the past had a way of finding people. Across town, Officer Ryan Caldwell sat inside his patrol car reviewing notes he had written about Marcus. He stared at the name, Marcus Bennett. Something about him bothered Ryan. The way he stayed calm, the way Shadow reacted, the way Marcus looked at danger without fear. Ryan picked up his phone and searched through public records. At first, nothing appeared unusual. A business owner, a homeowner, a quiet citizen. Ryan leaned back, frustrated. Then he noticed something strange. A gap. Several years of Marcus Bennett's history seemed almost impossible to find. No public information, no employment records, no explanation. Ryan narrowed his eyes. What are you hiding? He didn't know it yet, but the missing years he was searching for were connected to a story that would soon shake Maple Ridge. Meanwhile, Marcus looked toward the street from his porch. He noticed something. A dark vehicle parked across from his house. Watching. Marcus didn't move. He didn't panic. He simply placed his hand on Shadow's head. Because after years of trying to escape his past, Marcus finally realized something. The past wasn't coming back to hurt him. It was coming back to reveal the truth. The dark vehicle across the street did not leave. For nearly 20 minutes, Marcus Bennett sat quietly on his porch, watching the reflection of the streetlight move across the windshield. Shadow lay beside him, perfectly still. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have assumed it was just another car parked on a quiet street. But Marcus noticed details others missed. The way the driver never stepped out. The way the headlights remained off. The way the vehicle was positioned with a clear view of his house. Old instincts he thought he had buried years ago began to return. Marcus slowly stood up. "Stay," he whispered to Shadow. The old canine lifted his head. For a moment, Marcus saw the younger Shadow he remembered. The dog who once moved through dangerous environments without fear. The dog who had saved lives. The dog who had never abandoned him. Marcus walked inside and closed the door. He didn't call anyone. He didn't report the vehicle, because he knew exactly what kind of attention that would bring. And that was something Marcus had spent years avoiding. The next morning, however, Officer Ryan Caldwell made sure Marcus couldn't ignore him. At 8:15 a.m., Ryan's patrol car slowly rolled past Bennett Auto Repair. Then it stopped. Marcus looked through the garage window as Ryan stepped out. The officer walked inside with the same confident expression he had worn the day before. "Morning," Ryan said. Marcus continued working on the vehicle in front of him. "Good morning, officer." Ryan looked around. "Interesting place you have here." Marcus placed his wrench down. "What can I help you with?" Ryan smiled. "Maybe nothing." He walked toward the office area. "Just checking on things." Marcus watched him carefully. "Checking on what?" Ryan turned around. "You know, some neighborhoods have problems with people who don't belong." The words hung in the air. Marcus took a slow breath. "I've lived here for years." Ryan shrugged. "That doesn't always mean someone belongs." A customer standing near the entrance looked uncomfortable. He recognized the tension immediately. "Officer, Marcus has never caused any trouble," the customer said. Ryan glanced at him. "Did I ask you?" The customer immediately went quiet. Marcus noticed. He had seen this before, not just from Ryan, from people who believed authority meant they never had to listen. "Officer Caldwell," Marcus said calmly, "if you have a concern, explain it clearly." Ryan stepped closer. "My concern is that people sometimes hide behind a friendly image." Marcus looked directly at him. "And sometimes people judge others before knowing the truth." For the first time, Ryan's smile disappeared. The officer stared at him. Then he leaned closer. "Careful, Marcus." Marcus didn't move. "Is that a threat?" Ryan smiled again. "No." He adjusted his uniform. "It's advice." Then he walked away. But the message was clear. Ryan wasn't investigating anymore. He was trying to intimidate him. Over the next several days, the pressure increased. Marcus noticed Ryan appearing everywhere. Outside the repair shop, near the grocery store, driving slowly past his house. Always watching. Always searching. The neighbors noticed too. Some began whispering. "Why is that officer always following Marcus? What did he do? Maybe there's something we don't know." Those words hurt Marcus more than he wanted to admit. Not because he feared people discovering his past, But because he hated seeing people question his character, he had spent years building trust. And now one person with a badge was slowly trying to destroy it. One evening, Marcus found a parking violation notice placed on his truck. He stared at it. He knew it was wrong. The truck was parked exactly where it had always been parked. He walked outside and saw Ryan standing nearby. "Really?" Marcus asked. Ryan crossed his arms. "You have a problem with the citation?" Marcus held the paper. "Yes, because this isn't accurate." Ryan smiled. "Then challenge it." Marcus looked at him. "You know this isn't about parking." Ryan didn't answer. That silence said everything. Later that night, Marcus reviewed the small security camera above his garage. The camera had recorded Ryan placing the notice on his truck. Marcus watched the footage twice. Then he noticed something else. The camera across the street from his house had also captured the encounter from several days earlier. The moment Ryan shoved him, the moment Ryan insulted him, the moment Shadow stepped between them. Marcus stared at the screen. For years, he had avoided attention. But now the truth was being recorded without him asking. The next morning, Marcus received a visit from his neighbor, Evelyn Carter. She was an elderly woman who had lived in Maple Ridge for more than 30 years. She stood at his front door holding an old photograph. "Marcus," she said softly, "I need to ask you something." Marcus invited her inside. Evelyn placed the photograph on the table. It showed a younger Marcus standing beside a group of people near an emergency vehicle. "I knew I recognized you." Marcus looked at the picture. His expression changed slightly. "Where did you get this?" Evelyn smiled sadly. "Years ago, my husband told me about a man who saved his life." Marcus stayed silent. "He said that man disappeared before anyone could thank him." She looked at Shadow. "And now I realize that man was you." Marcus looked away. He didn't want this conversation. Not yet. But Evelyn's words confirmed something. The past he had hidden wasn't gone. People remembered. And someone else was beginning to search for the truth. Across town, Officer Ryan Caldwell opened a private database request. He had finally decided to investigate Marcus Bennett's missing years. He typed the name again, then pressed search. For several seconds, the screen remained blank. Then one restricted result appeared. Ryan leaned closer. His expression changed, because beneath Marcus Bennett's name was a classification he never expected to see. Access restricted. And for the first time, Officer Ryan Caldwell wondered if the man he had been threatening was far more powerful than he could imagine. The restricted message on Officer Ryan Caldwell's screen stayed there for several seconds. Access restricted. Ryan stared at the words, confused. A simple mechanic who owned a small repair shop should not have a restricted file. A quiet neighborhood resident should not have information hidden behind military-level protection. Ryan tried accessing it again. The system rejected the request. He leaned back in his chair. For the first time since he started watching Marcus Bennett, Ryan felt something he wasn't used to feeling. Uncertainty. But instead of stepping back, Ryan became more determined. He convinced himself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Marcus was hiding something. Maybe the calm attitude was just an act. Maybe the man everyone trusted wasn't who they believed he was. Ryan closed the computer. "I'll find out," he whispered. Meanwhile, Marcus was facing a different kind of battle. Not against Ryan. Against doubt. The following days were harder than he expected. Some neighbors still greeted him warmly. Others became distant. People who once stopped by his shop to talk now looked at him with questions in their eyes. Marcus understood. A rumor was powerful. Sometimes it didn't need proof. It only needed someone willing to spread it. One afternoon, Marcus was repairing a customer's truck when he heard two people outside talking. "I heard the officer has been investigating him. Maybe there's a reason." Marcus stopped for a moment. The words hurt. Not because they were true, but because they ignored everything he had done for the community. He lowered his eyes and continued working. That evening, Ethan Brooks finally approached him. The man who had watched everything from across the street walked into Bennett Auto Repair. Marcus recognized him immediately. He had seen Ethan before. A quiet neighbor, someone who rarely spoke about himself. But Marcus knew there was something different about him. Ethan looked around the shop. "Still fixing everyone's problems?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Someone has to." Ethan looked at Shadow resting in the corner. The old K9 immediately lifted his head. His ears moved. His eyes focused. Ethan noticed. "You know, most people would never train a dog like that." Marcus became quiet. "Shadow is different." Ethan nodded. "I know." A long silence followed. Marcus looked at him carefully. "How do you know?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the old photographs on the wall. "You spent years trying to disappear." Marcus's expression changed. "What are you talking about?" Ethan stepped closer. "I'm saying some people don't forget the ones who saved their lives." Marcus looked away. For years, he had protected his past. Not because he was ashamed, because he wanted peace. "I'm not that person anymore," Marcus said. Ethan nodded. "Maybe not." He looked at Shadow. "But some things never stop being part of you." Before Marcus could respond, a loud engine sound came from outside. Both men turned. Officer Ryan Caldwell's patrol car had stopped in front of the shop. Ryan stepped out. This time, he wasn't alone. Another officer stood beside him. Marcus walked outside. "What's going on?" Ryan held a folder. "We received a complaint." Marcus looked at the paper. "What complaint?" Ryan opened the folder. "Suspicious activity." Marcus almost laughed. "Suspicious activity?" Ryan looked around. "Your shop, your vehicles, your property." Marcus stared at him. "You've been looking for a reason." Ryan stepped closer. "Maybe you should have thought about that before making yourself noticed." Ethan watched silently. He understood exactly what Ryan was doing. This wasn't about safety. It was about power. Ryan wanted Marcus to react. He wanted him angry. He wanted him to make one mistake. But Marcus remained calm. "I have nothing to hide." Ryan smiled. "That's what everyone says." The second officer looked uncomfortable. Even he could see something was wrong. Ryan opened the folder again. "We may need to conduct a further inspection." Marcus looked at the documents. Something caught his attention. The signature, the authorization number. Something didn't match. Years of experience told him immediately. The paperwork was suspicious, but he said nothing. Not yet, because he knew something Ryan didn't. Truth didn't need anger. Truth needed patience. After the officers left, Ethan looked at Marcus. "He's getting desperate." Marcus nodded. "He's trying to force me to reveal something." Ethan studied him. "Are you afraid of that?" Marcus looked toward Shadow. "No. A pause. I'm afraid people will only respect me after they know what I've done." Ethan understood. That was the burden Marcus carried. He didn't want admiration because of a title. He wanted respect because of who he was today. That night, Marcus opened an old wooden box hidden beneath his bedroom floor. Inside were things he had not touched in years. A folded uniform, old photographs, military awards, and a small metal tag belonging to Shadow. Marcus held the tag in his hand. His eyes became emotional. He remembered the day he almost lost everything. The mission, the sacrifice, the promise he made. He closed the box. He wasn't ready to open that chapter. Not yet. But outside his window, another vehicle slowly passed his house. Ryan was still watching. And this time, he had something new. A plan. A plan that would push Marcus into a corner. A plan that would force the truth to come out. But Ryan had no idea that the truth he was chasing would become the very thing that destroyed his own reputation. Officer Ryan Caldwell believed he was finally close. For days, he had watched Marcus Bennett. He watched him open his repair shop every morning. He watched him greet neighbors. He watched him quietly help people who needed him. And every time Ryan saw Marcus remain calm, it only made him more suspicious. Because Ryan had convinced himself that calmness was not a sign of innocence. It was a sign of someone hiding something. So he created a plan designed to turn the neighborhood against Marcus. The first step came early Monday morning. When Marcus arrived at Bennett Auto Repair, he noticed something immediately. A city inspection notice was taped to the front door. He slowly removed the paper and read it. Temporary business review pending investigation. Marcus stared at the words. There was no warning, no previous complaint, no explanation, just an order that could damage everything he had built. A few minutes later, Ryan appeared. He stepped out of his patrol car with a satisfied expression. "Looks like someone is finally asking questions." Marcus turned toward him. "Officer Caldwell, you know this is unnecessary." Ryan shrugged. "I don't make the rules." Marcus looked at the notice again. "You requested this." Ryan smiled. "Can you prove that?" Marcus said nothing, because he knew exactly what Ryan was doing. Ryan wasn't trying to discover the truth. He was trying to make Marcus feel powerless. The officer walked closer. "You know what your problem is, Marcus?" Marcus looked at him. "You think being quiet makes you untouchable." Ryan pointed toward the shop. "But eventually everyone's secrets come out." Marcus remained calm. "My only secret is that I'm tired of people judging me without knowing me." Ryan laughed softly. "That sounds like something someone hiding something would say." Then he walked away. But this time, the neighborhood noticed. Several customers stood outside the shop. They had heard everything, and for the first time, some of them began questioning Ryan's actions. Later that afternoon, Evelyn Carter visited Marcus again. She held a folder filled with old papers. "I found something," she said. Marcus invited her inside. Evelyn placed the folder on the table. "These are old newspaper articles." Marcus looked at the pages. His expression changed. The articles mentioned a rescue operation years ago, a person who saved several lives during a dangerous incident. But the name was hidden. Only a photograph remained. Evelyn looked at him. That person was you, wasn't it? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He gently closed the folder. Evelyn, some parts of my life are better left in the past. She looked at him sadly. Maybe, but sometimes the past comes back because people need to know the truth. Marcus looked outside. He knew she was right. Meanwhile, Ryan continued building his case. He contacted other officers. He collected rumors. He wrote reports describing Marcus as uncooperative and potentially dangerous. The words were carefully chosen. Not because they were true, because they were useful. But Ryan made one mistake. He underestimated how many people were paying attention. A young mechanic named Daniel, who worked part-time at Marcus's shop, had noticed something strange. He had seen Ryan near the security cameras. He had seen him looking around the building. One evening, Daniel approached Marcus. Mr. Bennett, I think someone is trying to frame you. Marcus looked at him. What makes you say that? Daniel hesitated. Because I saw Officer Caldwell near the camera system last week. Marcus became quiet. That was important, very important. The security footage. The same footage Ryan didn't know Marcus had copied. Marcus walked into the office and turned on the computer. There it was. The video from the day Ryan confronted him. The shove, the insults, the humiliation. Every moment captured clearly. Marcus watched silently. Daniel looked angry. You could destroy him with this. Marcus shook his head. That's not the point. Then what is? Marcus looked at the screen. The point is making sure nobody else gets treated this way. Daniel understood. Marcus wasn't searching for revenge. He was searching for justice. But before Marcus could decide what to do, something worse happened. The next morning, his truck was stopped by Ryan again. This time, several neighbors were outside. Ryan approached with a serious expression. Marcus Bennett, step away from the vehicle. Marcus lowered the window. What's happening? Ryan held a document. You are being investigated for possession of unauthorized equipment. Marcus frowned. What equipment? Ryan motioned toward the truck. Open the back. Marcus slowly stepped out. He opened the truck. Inside was his usual equipment. Tools. Spare parts. Nothing unusual. Ryan searched anyway. Then suddenly, he stopped. He reached inside and pulled out an old military storage case. The case Marcus had forgotten was still there. The neighbors watched. Ryan lifted it. Well, what do we have here? Marcus's expression changed. Not because he was afraid, because he knew this moment was coming. Ryan smiled. A military case? He looked around at everyone. Interesting. Marcus stepped forward. Officer, put that down. Ryan opened the case slightly. Inside were old photographs and personal items. Things connected to Marcus's past. Ryan looked at him. Looks like you've been hiding more than you said. The neighbors watched in confusion. Marcus remained silent, because he knew something Ryan didn't. That box didn't contain evidence of wrongdoing. It contained the truth. But revealing that truth would change everything. And Marcus still wasn't sure he was ready. Across the street, Ethan Brooks watched the scene unfold. His expression became serious. He had waited long enough. Ryan had crossed a line, and soon the entire neighborhood would discover exactly who Marcus Bennett really was. The old military case sat in Officer Ryan Caldwell's hands as the entire neighborhood watched. For a moment, nobody spoke. The morning air felt heavy. Marcus Bennett stood beside his truck, calm on the outside, but inside he felt something he had avoided for years. The past had finally found him. Ryan looked at the case with curiosity mixed with satisfaction. He believed he had discovered something important, something that would prove Marcus was not the simple mechanic everyone believed him to be. So this is what you've been hiding, Ryan said. Marcus looked directly at him. That case belongs to me. Ryan smiled. Exactly. And now I'm asking why a neighborhood mechanic has military equipment hidden in his truck. A few neighbors exchanged worried looks. The question sounded convincing. That was Ryan's strength. He knew how to make suspicion sound like truth. Marcus took a slow breath. There's nothing illegal inside. Ryan opened the case further. Inside were old photographs, a worn military watch, a few medals, and a small metal tag attached to a chain. Shadow immediately stood up. The old K9 walked closer. His eyes locked onto the tag. Ryan noticed. What's wrong? Your dog recognizes it? Marcus gently touched Shadow's head. Some memories never disappear. Ryan laughed. Sounds dramatic. Then he turned toward the neighbors. Interesting, isn't it? Someone who claims he has nothing to hide suddenly has a secret military box. Marcus looked at the crowd. Many faces showed confusion. But some showed something different. Recognition. Evelyn Carter stepped forward slowly. Officer Caldwell. Ryan turned. What? Evelyn pointed at the photograph inside the case. I've seen that man before. Ryan frowned. What man? She picked up the photograph carefully. This man. Everyone looked. The picture showed a younger Marcus standing beside a group of service members. He looked different, younger, stronger, but unmistakably Marcus. Evelyn's voice became emotional. My husband kept a copy of a newspaper article about him. Ryan crossed his arms. About him doing what? Evelyn looked at Marcus. Marcus said nothing. She answered anyway. Saving people. The neighborhood became silent. Ryan looked annoyed. Saving people? He laughed. From what? A story? But then Ethan Brooks stepped out from across the street. Everyone turned. Ryan recognized him. You. Ethan walked closer. Yes. Ryan narrowed his eyes. What do you know about this? Ethan looked at Marcus, then at Shadow, then back at Ryan. More than you think. Marcus shook his head slightly. A silent warning. Not yet. Ethan understood. He stopped. For now. But the moment had already changed. People were no longer looking at Marcus as someone suspicious. They were looking at him with questions. Who was he? Why did he have military items? Why did a normal mechanic have a past nobody knew about? Ryan noticed the shift, and it made him uncomfortable. He quickly closed the case. This investigation isn't over. Marcus looked at him. You're right. Ryan smiled. Good. Then you understand you're still being watched. Marcus answered quietly. No, Officer Caldwell. A pause. You are. Ryan's expression hardened. For the first time, he felt something he hated. He felt exposed. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat inside his repair shop with Ethan. The military case rested on the table between them. You shouldn't have stepped in, Marcus said. Ethan looked at him. He was trying to destroy you. Marcus shook his head. I know. Then why keep silent? Marcus looked at the old photographs. Because I didn't want people to respect me because of what I used to be. Ethan nodded. That's exactly why people respect you. Marcus looked confused. Ethan continued. Real strength isn't needing everyone to know your achievements. The word stayed with Marcus. Because deep down, he knew Ethan was right. But the situation was getting worse. Ryan had started something he could no longer control. That evening, Ryan met with another officer at the station. He's hiding a military background, Ryan said. The other officer looked through the report. Is that illegal? Ryan hesitated. No. Then what exactly are you investigating? Ryan didn't answer, because the truth was becoming obvious. He wasn't investigating a crime. He was trying to prove that Marcus was someone dangerous because Ryan had already decided he was. And now evidence was starting to prove the opposite. Meanwhile, Ethan made a phone call. A call he had avoided making for years. It's time, he said. The person on the other end remained silent, then answered, Are you sure? Ethan looked out the window toward Marcus's house. No. A pause. But Marcus deserves the truth to be told. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A local community group posted a message online. Someone had shared an old article. The headline was partially visible. Unknown Navy hero saves team during critical operation. The photograph was blurry, but people recognized him. Marcus Bennett. Within hours, the neighborhood was filled with questions. Marcus saw the post on his phone. He knew the secret he had protected for years was beginning to disappear, and somewhere inside him, he felt both fear and relief. Because soon, everyone would know the truth. Not the rumors. Not Ryan's accusation. The truth. But Ryan Caldwell still had one final move, and he was preparing to make it. A move that would force Marcus Bennett to reveal everything. Officer Ryan Caldwell knew he was losing control. The story he wanted people to believe was slowly falling apart. At first, everyone in Maple Ridge looked at Marcus Bennett with suspicion. Now they were asking questions about Ryan. Why was he following Marcus? Why did he keep searching for problems? Why did every interaction between them end with Marcus staying calm and Ryan becoming more aggressive? Ryan hated those questions, because questions were dangerous. Questions made people think. And once people started thinking, they started seeing the truth. So Ryan decided to make one final move. He would not wait for the truth to come out. He would force Marcus into a position where he could control the story. 3 days later, Marcus received an official notice. He was required to appear at a community safety review meeting regarding multiple complaints connected to his business and personal conduct. Marcus read the letter twice. He knew exactly what it was. A public attack. Ryan wanted everyone in Maple Ridge to watch Marcus defend himself. He wanted people to see him as a problem, not as a neighbor, not as a friend, not as someone who had spent years helping the community. When Marcus arrived at the municipal building, the room was already filled. Several neighbors were there. Some supported Marcus. Others were simply curious. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood near the front, wearing a confident expression. He looked like a man who believed he had already won. "Mr. Bennett," Ryan said. Marcus walked forward. "Officer Caldwell." Ryan looked around the room. "We're here because concerns have been raised about your behavior, your background, and certain items connected to your property." Marcus remained silent. Ryan continued. "Many people in this community believe they know you." He paused. "But the truth is they don't." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Marcus looked at him. "You're making this personal." Ryan smiled. "No, I'm making sure people are safe." The words sounded professional, responsible, but everyone could feel the hostility behind them. Ryan presented several documents. He claimed Marcus had failed to disclose military equipment. He suggested Marcus had been dishonest about his past. He described Marcus as someone who avoided questions, but Ryan made one mistake. He talked too much, because every accusation revealed more about him than Marcus. Then Evelyn Carter stood up. "I have known Marcus for years." Ryan looked annoyed. "Mrs. Carter, this is not about personal opinions." She shook her head. "No, it's about character." The room became quiet. She continued. "When my husband had an accident years ago, everyone else was afraid to help." She looked at Marcus, but Marcus didn't hesitate. Ryan crossed his arms. "That doesn't explain his background." Evelyn looked at him. "Maybe because you never cared to ask." That sentence hit harder than anyone expected. Because it was true. Ryan never tried to understand Marcus. He only tried to prove him wrong. After the meeting ended, Ryan followed Marcus outside. "You think you're winning?" Marcus stopped walking. "I'm not trying to win." Ryan laughed. "Of course you aren't." He stepped closer. "People like you always say that when they know they're cornered." Marcus looked at him calmly. "Officer Caldwell, why are you so determined to make me look like a threat?" Ryan's expression changed. For a moment, he had no answer. Then he spoke quietly. "Because people who hide their past can't be trusted." Marcus looked directly into his eyes. "No." A pause. "People who refuse to learn the truth can't be trusted." Ryan's jaw tightened. He walked away, but Marcus knew something had changed. Ryan was no longer confident. He was desperate. That evening, Ethan visited Marcus again. "He's going to push harder." Marcus looked toward the street. "I know. You need to tell people." Marcus remained silent. Ethan understood. The problem was not fear. The problem was that Marcus had spent years trying to escape being defined by his past. He didn't want people seeing a hero. He wanted them seeing a human being. Finally, Marcus opened the wooden box again. This time, he removed the small metal tag attached to Shadow's old collar. He held it carefully. "This dog saved my life before I saved his." Ethan smiled slightly. "I remember." Marcus looked surprised. "You were there?" Ethan nodded. "I was." The silence between them carried years of memories. Danger, loss, brotherhood, things Marcus had buried. The next morning, Ryan made his final attack. He arrived at Bennett Auto Repair with several officers. Customers immediately noticed something was wrong. Ryan held a document. "Marcus Bennett, we are requesting access to inspect your property." Marcus looked at the paper. This time, he saw it clearly. The authorization number, the signature, the details. It was fake. "You created this yourself," Marcus said. Ryan froze slightly. "What did you say?" Marcus held up the document. "This isn't an official order." The other officers looked at Ryan. A moment of uncertainty passed. Ryan quickly recovered. "You're making accusations against an officer?" Marcus looked at him. "No." A pause. "I'm pointing out a fact." The tension became unbearable. Then Shadow slowly walked forward. The old K9 stood beside Marcus. Not aggressively, not threateningly, just present. The same way he had stood beside Marcus for years. Ryan looked at the dog and shook his head. "Still hiding behind that animal?" Marcus looked at Shadow, then back at Ryan. "No." He spoke quietly. "I'm standing beside a friend." Those words silenced the entire area, because everyone suddenly realized something. Marcus had never been afraid, not once. He had been patient. He had been controlled. He had given Ryan every chance to stop. But Ryan had chosen to continue, and now the truth was ready to come out. Across town, Ethan received confirmation. The people he contacted were arriving. The evidence was prepared. The moment Marcus had avoided for years was finally here. The next time Ryan Caldwell tried to destroy Marcus Bennett's reputation, the entire city would learn exactly who Marcus really was. The day everyone in Maple Ridge had been waiting for finally arrived. The community review hearing was no longer just about Marcus Bennett. It had become a question of something much bigger, a question about power, about judgment, about what happens when someone with authority decides they are allowed to treat another person as less important. The municipal building was packed. Neighbors filled the seats. Local reporters stood near the entrance. Several officers from the department were present, and at the center of the room sat Marcus Bennett, the same man many people had only known as a mechanic, the same man Officer Ryan Caldwell had tried to portray as suspicious. Marcus sat quietly beside Ethan Brooks. Shadow rested near his feet. The old K9 looked calm, almost as if he understood that something important was about to happen. Across the room, Ryan Caldwell appeared confident. He believed he still controlled the situation. He had prepared his statements. He had prepared his accusations, and he believed Marcus's secret past would make him look guilty. When the hearing began, Ryan stood. Over the past several weeks, concerns have been raised regarding Marcus Bennett's background, his behavior, and his refusal to cooperate with authorities. Marcus listened silently. Ryan continued, "Mr. Bennett has presented himself as an ordinary citizen, but evidence shows he has hidden significant information about his past." The room became quiet. Ryan looked toward Marcus. "The question before this community is simple. Why would someone hide who they really are?" Some people looked uncomfortable, because the question sounded reasonable, until Ethan stood. "I would like to answer that." Everyone turned. Ryan frowned. "And who exactly are you?" Ethan looked at him calmly. "My name is Commander Ethan Brooks." A few people whispered. Ryan's expression changed slightly. Ethan continued, "I served in the United States Navy SEALs for over 20 years. The room became completely silent. Ryan looked confused. "What does that have to do with Marcus Bennett?" Ethan looked toward Marcus. "Everything." He walked toward the center of the room, because Marcus Bennett never hid his past to deceive anyone. A pause. He hid it because he wanted a normal life. Ryan laughed. "A normal life?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." Then he looked around the room. "The man sitting here is not someone who needs to prove his worth." He pointed toward Marcus. He already proved it when nobody was watching. Ryan's confidence began to disappear. Ethan continued, "Marcus Bennett was not just a Navy SEAL." The room reacted. Marcus lowered his eyes. He had hoped this moment would never come, but now there was no going back. He was one of the most respected K9 handlers in his unit. Everyone looked at Shadow. Ethan continued, "Shadow was not a regular dog." The old K9 lifted his head. Shadow was a military working dog trained for high-risk operations. A wave of surprise moved through the room. Ryan stared. "That's impossible." Ethan looked at him. "No, Officer Caldwell." A pause. "What was impossible was believing you understood a man you never bothered to know." Those words hit the room, because everyone remembered. They remembered Ryan's accusations, the way he spoke to Marcus, the way he treated him in front of his own home. Then Ethan presented a folder. Inside were official records, photographs, service documents, awards. The evidence was placed on the table. Marcus Bennett served with honor. Ethan opened another document. He received multiple commendations for bravery. The room remained silent. Ryan looked through the papers. His face slowly changed, because everything he had assumed was wrong. The man he had called suspicious, the man he had tried to intimidate, the man he had humiliated, was someone who had spent years protecting others. But Ethan wasn't finished. However, this hearing is not about Marcus's military history. Everyone looked at him. It's about what happened here. A large screen behind them turned on. The security footage appeared. The room watched the first video. Ryan approaching Marcus's driveway. Ryan grabbing the toolbox. Ryan pushing Marcus against the patrol vehicle. Nobody spoke. Then came the audio. "Remember your place, Marcus." The words echoed through the room. Several neighbors lowered their heads. They had heard those words. They had witnessed that moment. But now they saw it differently. Ryan stood frozen. "That video doesn't show the full situation." Ethan turned toward him. "Then let's watch the rest." Another video played. The parking notice. The false inspection. The confrontation outside the repair shop. Every moment, every action, every attempt to pressure Marcus, the truth was impossible to ignore. Ryan looked around. The same people who once questioned Marcus were now questioning him. The department representatives exchanged serious looks. One officer slowly shook his head. "You never reported these interactions." Ryan remained silent, because there was nothing left to say. Then something unexpected happened. Shadow slowly walked toward Marcus. The old K9 placed his head against Marcus's hand. Marcus gently touched him. A simple moment, but everyone understood. This dog had trusted Marcus for years, and maybe people should have done the same. Ethan looked at the room. The greatest mistake people make is judging someone by what they see today. He paused. Sometimes the person standing quietly beside you has already done things you could never imagine. The hearing continued for hours. More witnesses came forward. Daniel provided additional security footage. Evelyn shared the story of how Marcus once saved her husband. The evidence continued building. By the end of the day, the truth was no longer hidden. Ryan Caldwell had not exposed Marcus Bennett. He had exposed himself. But there was still one final step. The investigation into Ryan's actions had only begun, and the consequences waiting for him would be far greater than he ever expected. Because Marcus Bennett was finally ready to tell the world the truth, not to receive praise, not to become a hero, but to make sure nobody else in Maple Ridge was ever treated the way he had been. The room remained silent after the final video ended. No one moved, no one whispered, because everyone had just witnessed something they could never forget. The man they once saw standing alone in his driveway, being treated like a threat, was the same man who had spent years protecting others. And the officer who claimed he was protecting the neighborhood had been the one abusing his position. Ryan Caldwell looked around the room. For the first time, he was no longer the person in control. The confidence he had carried for weeks was gone. One of the department supervisors slowly stood. "Officer Caldwell, do you have an explanation for these recordings?" Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because there was no explanation that could erase what everyone had seen. The supervisor looked through the documents again. "The reports you submitted contain statements that are inconsistent with the recorded evidence." Ryan looked frustrated. "I was doing my job." Ethan Brooks stepped forward. "No." His voice was calm. "You were protecting your own assumptions." Ryan looked at him. "You don't know what it's like dealing with people who hide things." Ethan shook his head. "No, Officer Caldwell. A pause. You don't know what it's like to meet someone who has already sacrificed everything and still chooses kindness." Those words stayed in the room. Marcus had been silent throughout the hearing. He finally stood. Everyone turned toward him. For years, he had avoided talking about his past. He avoided recognition. He avoided attention. But now he realized something. Silence could protect him, but sometimes silence allowed others to continue hurting people. "My name is Marcus Bennett," he said. His voice was steady. "I spent many years serving my country." The room listened. "I lost friends. I faced situations most people will never experience." He looked toward Shadow. "And I had a partner who stayed beside me through all of it." Shadow slowly lifted his head. Marcus smiled slightly. "But when I left that life, I made a decision." He looked around the room. "I didn't want people to respect me because of a uniform or a title. A pause. I wanted them to respect me because of how I treated them." Several neighbors lowered their eyes. They remembered moments when Marcus helped them. The elderly man whose car he repaired for free. The young worker he gave a second chance. The families he supported quietly without telling anyone. Ryan had spent weeks searching for a reason to distrust Marcus. But everyone else had years of reasons to trust him. The investigation continued over the following days. The department reviewed every complaint, every report, every interaction Ryan had with Marcus. They discovered a pattern. Ryan had repeatedly used his authority to intimidate residents who were less likely to challenge him. Marcus was not the first person. He was simply the person whose story finally brought everything into the light. 1 week later, the department announced its decision. Officer Ryan Caldwell was suspended immediately. An internal investigation was opened. His authority was removed while the review continued. The announcement spread quickly throughout Maple Ridge. But Marcus did not celebrate. He didn't feel victorious. He felt relieved. Because the goal was never to destroy Ryan. The goal was to stop the behavior. That evening, Ethan visited Marcus's house. The two men sat on the porch while Shadow rested nearby. "You finally let people know who you are," Ethan said. Marcus looked at the street. "I guess I had to." "Do you regret it?" Marcus thought for a moment. "No." He looked at Shadow. "But I hope people remember the lesson, not the medals." Ethan smiled. "That's exactly why people will remember you." The next morning, something unexpected happened. Several neighbors gathered outside Marcus's repair shop. Not with cameras, not with questions, with gratitude. Evelyn stepped forward. "We owe you an apology." Marcus shook his head. "You don't." She looked at him. "Yes, we do." She glanced around. "We saw what someone wanted us to see." A pause. "But we didn't take the time to see who you really were." Marcus smiled gently. "That happens to a lot of people." The neighborhood slowly changed after that. People became more willing to speak up. The community started meetings about trust and accountability. The police department introduced new training programs focused on respectful communication and proper use of authority. And Marcus? He returned to his normal life. He still repaired cars, still helped neighbors, still walked Shadow every morning. Because despite everything that happened, Marcus never wanted to be remembered as a victim. He wanted to be remembered as a man who stood with dignity when someone tried to take it away. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, Marcus sat outside with Shadow beside him. The old canine looked peaceful. Marcus placed a hand on his head. "You know, old friend," Shadow looked up. "We never wanted attention." The dog gently moved his tail. Marcus smiled. But sometimes the truth finds its own way home. And this time, the entire neighborhood understood the truth. A person's value is not determined by what others assume. It is revealed by the lives they touch, the sacrifices they make, and the courage they show when nobody is watching. Several months had passed since the day Maple Ridge discovered the truth about Marcus Bennett. But the biggest change was not what happened to Ryan Caldwell. It was what happened to the community. For years, many people believed justice was simply about punishment. Someone did something wrong. Someone paid the price. The story ended there. But Marcus showed them something different. Justice was also about responsibility. It was about making sure the same mistake did not happen again. After the investigation was completed, Officer Ryan Caldwell officially lost his position. The review confirmed multiple violations, including misuse of authority, false reporting, and inappropriate conduct toward residents. The badge he once used as a symbol of power was taken away. But Marcus never celebrated. When reporters asked him how he felt about Ryan's punishment, Marcus gave a simple answer: "I hope he learns from it." The reporters were surprised. After everything Ryan had done, they expected anger. They expected revenge. Instead, they saw a man who had every reason to hate someone but chose not to. Marcus understood something important. Holding on to hatred would only allow the person who hurt him to continue affecting his life. So he chose peace. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because he refused to become the same kind of person who had hurt him. The community also changed. The old neighborhood where people once stayed silent became a place where people spoke up. Residents began attending community meetings. They discussed how to build better relationships between citizens and law enforcement. They talked about the importance of listening before judging. And whenever someone mentioned the events involving Marcus Bennett, people remembered one thing. The truth was almost hidden, but it was never gone. At Bennett Auto Repair, life slowly returned to normal. Marcus still arrived early every morning. He still opened the garage doors. He still repaired engines and helped people who needed him. Nothing about his routine changed, except now, people knew the man behind the work. Customers who came into the shop often asked about his past. Some wanted to hear stories from his years of service. Some wanted to know about Shadow. Marcus always smiled. Those days were important. Then he would look around the shop. But these days matter too. Because to Marcus, being a hero was not only about dangerous missions, it was also about small acts of kindness. Fixing someone's car, helping a neighbor, giving someone hope when they needed it. One afternoon, Ethan Brooks visited the shop one final time before leaving for another assignment. He looked around. "Funny, isn't it?" Marcus looked up. "What? You spent years trying to disappear." Marcus smiled. And somehow people found out exactly who you were." Marcus laughed softly. "I guess some truths are too important to stay hidden forever." Ethan looked toward Shadow, who was resting near the office. "He still acts like he's on duty." Marcus smiled. "He always will." The two men stood quietly for a moment. They both knew Shadow's time was becoming limited. The old K9 had given everything he had, not only in service, but in friendship. That evening, Marcus took Shadow for their usual walk through Maple Ridge. The same streets where he had once been humiliated. The same streets where people had watched silently. But now, something was different. Neighbors stepped outside. They waved. They smiled. Children and families greeted Marcus with respect, not because of his military history, not because of medals, not because of a title, because they finally understood his character. Marcus stopped near his old house and looked around. Months earlier, he had stood in that exact place while someone tried to convince everyone he did not belong. Now he stood there knowing something much stronger. He had always belonged. Not because someone gave him permission, because he had earned his place through the way he lived. Shadow sat beside him. Marcus placed his hand gently on the dog's head. "You know something, old friend?" Shadow looked up. "We never needed to prove who we were." The dog's tail moved slowly. The truth always knew. And that was the lesson Maple Ridge never forgot. A person should never be judged by their appearance, their clothes, their job, or the assumptions of others. Because behind every quiet person may be a story nobody knows. Behind every ordinary face may be courage, sacrifice, and strength. And sometimes, the people others underestimate are the very people who have the most to teach the world. Marcus Bennett did not win because he had a powerful past. He won because he kept his dignity when someone tried to take it away. He won because he chose patience over anger. He won because the truth does not need to shout. It only needs the chance to be seen. Never judge someone by what you see on the surface. A person's true value is revealed through kindness, courage, and the way they treat others when nobody is watching. Remember that dignity cannot be taken by someone's disrespect, and justice will always find its way. Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more inspiring stories about courage, truth, and hope.